Chris Holtmann gets the boot in February. Jake Diebler steps up, and Ohio State immediately turns that into a win over Purdue. And the Buckeyes finished the season strong. While some of us may think that shooting regression might have played a factor in Ohio State's struggles during January, Diebler definitely made an impact, and Ohio State played some really good ball down the stretch. Christian and Nick here with Andy Backstrom, who covers Ohio State for On 3. So, Andy, Jake Diebler now settled in. It's his job now. You retain some talent. You bring in some interesting pieces. Michi Johnson comes back to name one of them. How excited is this fan base about year two for Diebler? What's the level of confidence that this team can be in the upper echelon of the Big Ten?
There's a lot of excitement and enthusiasm. I think even happened last year. It was just such a whirlwind, right? You have Chris Holtmann being fired on Valentine's Day of all days, mid-season. You mentioned the win over Purdue. Ohio State actually won 6 of its first 7 games under Jake Diebler, got onto the bubble, didn't make it because they got bounced in the Big Ten tournament by Illinois. And then they go in the INIT and win a couple games there. Finished with 22 wins, was actually their most since the first year of the Chris Holtmann era back in 2017-18. So weirdly, have 22 wins, but you don't make the NCAA tournament. As you guys remember, the bubble was kind of tricky this year. A lot of teams made late pushes like Ohio State. So there's a lot of enthusiasm that Jake Diebler can build on that success down the stretch of last season. But it is a new roster. I think when they brought Jake Diebler on as full-time head coach, the assumption was there's going to be a ton of continuity. They're going to bring back everyone. But still, they had 5 players enter the transfer portal. They had 2 graduate, and it looks like a pretty different roster.
Yeah, I love what he brought in from the transfer portal. Honestly, I mean, 2 former McDonald All-Americans and Sean Stewart and Aaron Bradshaw with just high upside, and Michi Johnson, Little Marfo, actually coming back to Ohio State from a really good South Carolina team that made the tournament last season, and Micah Parrish, a winning player from San Diego State. So let's just talk about those 4 portal ads and what to expect from them year one with Ohio State.
Yeah, Jake Diebler wanted to bring in guys who had NCAA tournament experience because Ohio State's missed the tournament back-to-back years. So that was a big emphasis. And look, Micah Parrish has played in 9 NCAA tournament games. He was national champion runner-up with San Diego State. Like, that's a lot of experience. He's probably starting for Ohio State this year at a wing position, like kind of as a bigger guard in that 3-guard lineup. You'll probably see along with Michi Johnson and Bruce Thornton. Michi Johnson, you just mentioned it. Like, yeah, he helped South Carolina make the NCAA tournament for the first time since they made the Final Four during that 16-17 season. And he just progressed a lot there in Columbia. Like, when he was at Ohio State, quite frankly, he wasn't really ready from a physical maturation standpoint, from maybe even like an emotional maturation standpoint. He came in early, actually didn't even finish full high school career, came into Ohio State, and I don't think he was quite ready. Now he's kind of matured. He's much better at scoring the basketball at all 3 levels. I think he still needs to be a little bit more efficient, but that scoring volume is going to be huge to replace, the lost production of Roddy Gale Jr., losing some production from Felix Okpara. You graduate Jamison Battle, like having Michi Johnson is so key. And you mentioned it, the 2 bigs they brought in, right? The former McDonald's All-Americans, former top 20 overall prospects, and Sean Stewart and Aaron Bradshaw. There's a bit of a risk there, right? Because they're second-year players who didn't get to play a lot for blue-chip programs. Aaron Bradshaw was at Kentucky. Sean Stewart was at Duke. The question is, can they maximize their potential? Can they live up to those recruiting rankings? Jake Diebler thinks they can, and I think that's going to be really depending on if they can develop quickly for Ohio State, and that will really factor into how good this Ohio State team is this year.
So Michi is a guy that has grown. When you talk about the maturation, he's definitely grown. He's got that shooting range, which can be electric at times, but he's also hasn't top 32% from deep in a season. Do you expect that with Bruce Thornton, a guy whose assist to turnover ratio was one of the best in the country last year, how will those guys fit together? Do you think Michi will be off the ball more, and do you think thus becoming more efficient, or do you think they'll kind of both be running the show a bit and taking pressure off each other that way?
Yeah, I think they're going to both run the show a little bit. I think they both want to play on the ball and off the ball, and I think that's going to help for their development if they do want to play in pro career. NBA would be the goal, but even if they're playing overseas, like, you need the experience to be able to play off the ball, and I think they're both embracing that. And I think that for each of them, it will help their efficiency. Bruce Thornton didn't shoot the ball as well as I think he could have last year from downtown, partly because of the spacing issues. Like, there weren't enough shooters on this team. It was Jamison Battle and then kind of a drop-off. I think Bruce Thornton's a better shooter than you saw last year. He shot the ball at around a 38.7% clip or somewhere around there his freshman year. It was higher than it was his sophomore year. And I think he's going to get back to that just because I think they'll space the floor better. Micah Parrish is someone who's consistently hovered around the 53-point make per season mark. And I think having three guys like that could all hit 50 or more threes will be key. Actually, Ohio State hasn't had that since 2010, 2011, have three guys hit that mark. So that would be really key in terms of spacing the floor, attracting attention from one guy in particular. I think the efficiency should go up. They're also hoping to get some three-point shooting from Aaron Bradshaw and Sean Stewart. That might be wishful thinking. We saw a little bit from Aaron Bradshaw stretching the floor last year at Kentucky, but again, small sample size there.
Yeah, there's three other guys coming in that we haven't hit on yet, but I've heard good things about Junie Mobley and Colin White, both true freshmen. And then where is Keith Glover at, the late transfer? Where is he at in the process of being able to play this year? And what do we expect out of him? Because I really loved his game from Stanford. He just had to sit last season with an injury at Kansas State. So what can we expect from those three guys this season?
Yeah, the freshmen are really impressive. When we've gotten to see practice, I think that's kind of jumped off the page for me, just how impactful they could be year one. Junie Mobley is someone that is going to play a lot, I think, right away and should help with that three-point department. Like, he's someone that was in the national three-point contest in high. He was really good at scoring at all three levels in high school. He's more physical than you'd expect from a freshman. He's got some size, some beef to him. He's not the tallest guy, but he's not going to be pushed around in year one, which I think is always important for freshmen coming in, even on the perimeter. And then Colin White is kind of that grinded out, gritty player that in practice is, leading sprint lines, trying to do whatever he can to get playing time. Really productive at Ottawa Glandorf, which is a high school here in Northwest Ohio. Actually, he and LeBron James are the only two players in the state of Ohio to start on 4 consecutive Final Four teams in the high school level. So that's pretty good company, right? So he's very productive. He actually got his Ohio State offer pretty late in the cycle. They were kind of waiting on his development, and late in his high school career, he kind of really flourished, took the next step. So they're liking what they're seeing from both Colin White at that wing position, and then also from Junie Mobley at guard. And then, Quez Glover's really interesting. Crazy career, right? You mentioned starts at Florida, then goes to Stanford, where he had more production scoring the basketball. And then the last couple of years, or last year, I guess, he kind of started, at BYU for a minute. He was there and didn't even play a game there, then got hurt, didn't play at all. So he's kind of had this winding path where Ohio State is actually technically his 5th school, but he's only played games at Florida and Stanford. So they got him because they had an injury this offseason to Taysom Chapman, who was a guard that they were hoping would come along in year 2. He went down with an ACL tear, and so they needed guard depth. And that was really fascinating because Quez Glover is technically not on scholarship. He's actually being paid through one of the NAL collectives here. So that's something I think you're seeing across college basketball. They're getting creative with how to, get a scholarship type player that's technically not on scholarship. So they're not even calling him a walk-on. They're just saying that he's a non-scholarship player, but they're going to count on him for guard depth. I think he's really good knifing inside, getting to the lane. I don't know if he's the most reliable three-point shooter. He can make shots from the outside, but I think they're going to count on him as another reliable ball handler.
A few things came to mind during those answers. Some great insight there. One was when you talked about the kind of college game ready, Big Ten ready body of Mobley. It made me think of Bryce Sensabaugh and Malachi Branham. I know those are big shoes to fill, but those were guys that came in. It's that dude's a freshman. So I'm excited to watch him play. And Ohio State does have a good track record. In terms of that physicality, the last 2 years, Ohio State's just had a lot of, physical teams, just strong guys and guys who can play in the post, whether it was Zed Key or even more hybrid kind of forwards, whether it was Liddell or Kyle Young. Do you see to me, this just seems like a very guard-centric team that's going to want to play faster and shoot a lot of threes because your two bigs bringing in are a little bit more raw in that kind of rim-running, athletic, stringy mold. So do you think that this is kind of a little bit of a changing in the way Ohio State wants to play basketball in year 2 under Diebler of it's going to be faster and you aren't going to really be banging around in the post as much?
Yeah, it's going to be fast. That's for sure. Like the way they run practice is fast. There's no walking from drill to drill. It's constant movement. Jake Diebler's in there with the players, running through drills at times with them. Like it is full on. We're go 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 go. And you even saw that last year when he was the interim coach. They were playing at a much faster pace. Like all the data on Ken Palm as far as pacing goes supports that. The defense picked up as well. They actually allowed fewer points during that stretch of the 11 games that Jake Diebler was running the show than the previous 12 games under the final stretch of that Chris Holtman run. And so there were more possessions and fewer points given up. That's obviously a really good thing. Part of it was also forcing more turnovers, getting out in the break, scoring. But again, how sustainable is that across 35 some games, right? I think that's the question. And that's why this conditioning in the offseason is so important. I do think they need to have a post presence, though, to your point. Like, and I think Devin Royal is going to be a key player in that. We haven't talked about him yet. He's one of the returners. And I think he came on late last year in his freshman year. And that was really important to see from him to step up in that low post. He's only 6'6", but he plays bigger than that. Kind of like Zedke, only 6'8" really, but plays bigger than that. So I think they'll have a bit of that post presence, but to your point, like they're going to run. And that's why they got some of these portal players. Like Aaron Bradshaw wanted that. Sean Stewart wanted that. That's why they got some of this talent. It's where the game is going. The younger guys want that. And that's part of the reason why Jake Diebler is doing that.
Is Royal a guy? Sorry, just real quick. Is Royal a guy you think could start for this team?
I think he's starter level. I don't think he'll start. Like for me, my projection is that Bruce Thornton, Michi Johnson will start along with Micah Parrish, Sean Stewart, and Aaron Bradshaw. But I think that, Devin Royal is going to be playing 25 or so minutes a game. Like he's going to be a big piece for this team.
For sure, yeah. Devin Royal coming off the bench just attests to how good the starters really are for Ohio State this season. And you talked about wanting to play fast, and there was a noticeable change last season when Diebler took over playing fast. Defensively, do you think it's smart for Ohio State to say, hey, like let's turn up that pressure? Like we have Sean Stewart, we have Aaron Bradshaw, elite rim protectors, bouncy guys in the back. Like let's take some risks. Do you think that is an option this season?
Yeah, I think they should. I mean, I think that's going to be, it's also you're playing a little bit against the grain in the Big Ten, which I think is interesting. And I think that's not the worst idea as far as recruiting. Like guys are appealed, that's an appeal to guys. Like they want the fast play. Look at the NBA. I mean, we see that all the time, right? I think that's where everyone wants to go. It's not a bad idea to model a little bit of that and to get out and run. And so, yeah, I agree. I think that putting pressure on the ball is going to be huge. Again, it just comes down to like, can you sustain that? Yeah, they had that over the last 11 games when they got that spark of Diebler taking over and winning consecutive games in a row and making a push for the NCAA tournament. Can you do that in November all the way through March and April? And I think that's, what I'm going to be looking for because that's hard to maintain. That's a really hard thing to maintain over the course of the season.
We've done a lot of these previews, and when we look at transfer portal classes, some teams it seems like they were just trying to get talent, and other teams it seems like they were very strategic about who they had. And I think Ohio State is definitely one of those teams that was very strategic about the fits in terms of the identity of the team. And in terms of, I like the point you made about Stewart and Bradshaw wanting to play this style and like them being a fit. Because when you think about guys who've been productive as NBA fives, whether they're starting or coming off the bench, you got to be two things. You either got to be super skilled and can shoot it, or you got to be a 7-foot-ish athletic freak who can jump and throw down lobs and protect the rim, like the Derek Lively's, the Yves Mises, Mark Williams, and Bradshaw has the pedigree for that in Stewart as well. So I think those are guys are and similar to what Akpara was last year. Akpara threw down a lot of dunks. Last question I got is Bruce Thornton is the main returning piece, but a guy like Micah Parrish, you talked about his NCAA tournament experience and his age. Is Bruce Thornton the leader of this team, or does a guy like Micah Parrish command so much respect for what he's done at the collegiate level that is he a guy that comes in and becomes a leader? And Michi Johnson's also a fifth-year player. So who is that vocal leader, would you say?
Yeah, it's definitely Bruce Thornton. Bruce was actually promoted to captain midseason his freshman year, which just doesn't really happen at Ohio State. Now, of course, Ohio State was losing. They lost 14 to 15 games during that stretch in the winter of that freshman year for him. So that was an important time for him to rise up. He hit a bit of a freshman wall, and he was still promoted to captain midseason. captain last year. I'm sure he's going to be a captain this year. He is definitely the voice of this basketball team. He is like the epitome of a college guard that you want nowadays. He's a very good college basketball player. He's not good enough to be like in the NBA, so leaving after 1 or 2 years. So it's kind of the perfect sweet spot that they have with him at Ohio State, and he loves Ohio State. So he is definitely the voice of the team. He's definitely the pulse of the team. I think Michi Johnson is taking a leadership role alongside of him for that backcourt. And, I think that is definitely important. And you mentioned Micah Parrish. I think he will eventually. He kind of reminds me a little bit, though, with Jamison Battle. Like, Jamison Battle really became a leader as the season went on. But as he came over from Minnesota, he was also a 2-time transfer, started his career at George Washington. He didn't want to, like, step on toes immediately. So he took a little bit of time to get comfortable with the team before he really was a vocal leader. And it was almost night and day, talking to Jamison Battle, media days in the fall, and then talking to him and seeing him play at the end of the year. Like, he was leading timeout huddles and stuff like that. I wouldn't be surprised if we seen the same progression with Micah Parrish as well.
I lied. I got one more bonus one. Roddy Gale going to Michigan.
Yeah.
How unexpected was that? How pissed off people? And I assume he won't have a very warm welcome when he comes back this year.
Yeah, and Ohio State does not have to go to Ann Arbor this year. Michigan's just going to Ohio State. So that game is circled on the calendar for everyone. Basketball doesn't get as much attention here as football. That's not shocking, but it was still very weird. It was still a very weird thing that people raised their eyebrows and turned their heads on and were like, that doesn't make sense. But I will say, as much as it is personal, right? That rivalry is so baked into everything here in Columbus and Ann Arbor. He seems to have taken the approach of like, this is purely basketball for me. Like, he seems to like the free flowing approach that Dusty May is going to take with him. I don't know how different that is than what Jake Diebler was going to do, because I also think that lends to Roddy Gale's skill set. And I think that Jake Diebler was getting a lot out of Roddy Gale. Like, you look at the numbers, he was a better rebounder. He was shooting better. He was getting to the line more. Like, there was so much to like about what he was doing under Diebler. But again, yeah, he's at Michigan. I think he's gonna be really good. He was actually, I'm super high on Roddy Gale Jr. Like, I think he's a really high end player who could play in the NBA. I think his NBA ceiling is probably higher than Bruce Thornton. Right now, Bruce Thornton's a better college player, but the two-way ability of Roddy Gale is like really intriguing. He's super athletic as well.
Yeah.
Andy, you've been awesome. This was great. Feeling like I got a good understanding of this Ohio State roster. So appreciate your time, and hope you guys. I know football's still the focus right now, but hope you guys have a great basketball season.
Yeah, appreciate it. Yeah, weird non-conference slate coming up, guys. They have a game in Vegas against Texas to start. So this is going to be a fun team to kind of watch through non-con and see how good they are before everyone beats up on each other in the Big Ten, which is always something to watch. So we'll see.
Absolutely. Thanks again, Andy.
Yeah, appreciate it, guys.